everybody, welcome back to In The Huddle. I'm Jillian Kushner. Today's episode is part 3 of football basics. I think this might be the last one. I think we'll cover everything today. So before y'all go, please subscribe below and like the Facebook page, which will be in the description box, and let's get started. So for part 3, we're going to talk about penalties. A lot of these penalties can be very confusing. There's like a billion penalties you can get called for in football, but there's really about 10 that are just called the most. So I'm going to talk about those ones so y'all can just really understand the most common penalties in college and NFL. Really, they stay the same through both leagues. They're both pretty common in both. The first penalty I'll talk about is one that's pretty common. You'll see it almost all the time, just about in every game. It's a false start. A false start is on the offense. So if I'm on offense and I'm about to hike the ball, like I told you in a previous video, you have a play clock. It's a 40-second play clock. If that play clock runs down and I haven't snapped the ball yet, that's a false start. It's a 5-yard penalty, so it just pushes me back 5 yards. Another way to get a false start is if someone, like a lineman, jumps across the line before the ball is snapped, that's also a false start. Basically, you're just getting ahead of yourselves is what that penalty is about, or just being too lazy. It's one of the two. Kind of different, but kind of the same. But another thing about false starts is a false start, it will blow the play dead. So if you're ever watching a play and they throw a flag and they blow the play dead, it's always a false start. They don't blow the play dead if it's offsides. They keep the play going. And then the next common penalty, this is probably the most common, is holding. Holding is just what it sounds like. It's just grabbing a hold of somebody. You can block and you can tackle people, but to pull them like that, to hold onto their arms or hold onto them like that, that's illegal. Holding is called just about more than anything in the league. A holding penalty can be called on offense, defense, special teams. Anyone can get called for holding. It's illegal. I think it happens a lot more than we get called for. It's just a natural thing. If someone's running away from you, you grab onto them and hold onto them. It's just natural. So if we were to replay every single play in football, you would call holding on every single play. Multiple counts of holding. But really the most obvious ones get called. It's a 10-yard penalty. So if it's called on the defense, I would get a first down on offense. If it's called on the offense, then I'm pushed back 10 yards. So it can be a big one, but it happens all the time. Another common penalty is offsides, which is on the defense. So how the offense can false start, the defense can jump offsides, which is just before the ball is snapped, you jump over the line. You'll see it happen sometimes. Sometimes it's very blatant, sometimes not as much. A lot of times it'll be difficult to tell if the offense false started or the defense jumped offsides first. Usually they'll have to decide which one was more obvious, but same thing, it's a 5-yard penalty. And the next penalty to talk about is pass interference. Pass interference is literally what it says. It's interfering with the pass. It can be called on offense or defense. Offensive pass interference is a lot less common than defensive pass interference. So what pass interference is, if the ball is up, if I'm a receiver, the ball is up coming towards me, the defender cannot tackle me. The ball is in my air coming my way, they can't tackle me, that's pass interference. And I can't tackle them, that would be offensive pass interference. You can't interfere with the way the ball is coming to me. So if the defender is all over me or if I'm all over the defender, that's going to be called for pass interference because it's messing up my ability to catch the ball or it's messing up the defender's ability to block the ball. However, pass interference cannot be called if the ball is not catchable. So if the ball is going, if there's no way I could catch that ball, if it's flying out of bounds, but the defender tackled me, that's not pass interference because I wasn't going to catch it anyway. So that's a little trick with pass interference is it's a pretty common penalty though, and some pushing and shoving is allowed. A lot of times you'll see mutual. It's usually when one person, either the defender or receiver, does more than the other person's doing. That's when it gets called for pass interference. Unnecessary roughness is the next penalty to talk about, which is just what it says. It's being unnecessarily rough. Football is a tackle sport, it is a rough sport, but there's a limit to how rough you can be. Unnecessary roughness, they've recently changed it to be where it kind of talks about a group of different penalties. I'm pretty sure every single one of them is a 15-yard penalty. Unnecessary roughness would be roughing the passer, which is if I throw the ball's out of my hands, you can't run and tackle me because I'm innocent at that point. You can't hit me anymore. So if I were to throw the ball and then someone comes and runs and tackles me, that's unnecessary roughness. It's a 15-yard penalty. I believe a face mask is now an unnecessary roughness. A face mask is now only 15-yard penalty. They used to change it. It would either be 5 yards or 15 yards, depending on how severe it was, but they've since changed that because of all the concussion protocol and everything. So face mask, you can't grab somebody's face mask like that and yank it. If you see someone grab your face mask and then pull and you see their neck move, that's a penalty. easy penalty. Another unnecessary roughness penalty is a new one, but it's becoming increasingly common, is targeting. Targeting is when you hit somebody with the crown of your helmet. It's just targeting their head, basically. Like I said, concussion protocol has gotten really serious in football. They're trying to protect against these concussions, and targeting is a penalty to help fix that. Targeting, it is a 15-yard penalty, and it can also get the player ejected. They can review it to see if the player should be ejected or not. They can review targeting. It's the only penalty you can review. It's kind of weird. So if I throw the flag and I say, this is targeting, I can then go and review it. And I could be like, just kidding, wasn't targeting. Which is weird. You can't do that for any other penalty, but you can do it for that. More unnecessary roughness is like running into the kicker, or roughing the kicker and running into the kicker. Those are two different penalties. One, roughing the kicker is 15 yards. Running into the kicker is 5 yards. Running into the kicker is different because sometimes you just cannot slow yourself down. You cannot stop yourself from going full speed to stopping. So running into the kicker is kind of like you did on accident. Roughing the kicker is like more of an intentional penalty. Another very common penalty is illegal block in the back. This really mostly happens on kickoffs and punt returns, and it's probably the most frustrating thing. If you get a really big kick return, like let's say you get a kickoff and you return it for a touchdown, if you see a flag on the ground, it's almost certainly illegal block in the back. Illegal block in the back can happen on offense and defense as well, but it's really, really common on special teams. What it is if I'm blocking, you can't come and hit me in the back. Like if my back's towards you, you can't tackle me from that way. If you do, it's illegal block in the back. It's really simple, just blocking me in the back. You can't do that. And that's how a lot of big returns happen, is someone does that, and it sucks because when you get that called back, it's a hard thing to watch. The last penalty I'm going to talk about is unsportsmanlike conduct, which is probably the most frustrating penalty. What this penalty has come to embody is really stupid penalties, and that's all it is. For example, if you celebrate too much, that's unsportsmanlike conduct. Yes, they flag you for celebration. Taunting, which I think is ridiculous. That's unsportsmanlike conduct. There are a handful of these penalties that are just kind of silly that you get called for. Things that shouldn't be illegal. Like celebrating, that shouldn't be illegal, but it is. Especially in the NFL, you'll get that penalty and you'll get fined. Of course, you can't fine a college player, but in the NFL, that does come with a fine. It's a 15-yard penalty as well. And so let's say if it were to happen on a touchdown because I was celebrating, it'll move the kick back. Or if it happens before the play, I've seen it overturn a touchdown, which is ridiculous. It's an awful penalty. It's probably, I don't know any football fan who thinks this is a good penalty. So that's all for the big penalties in football. Really, those are the most common ones you hear called. Of course, there are other penalties, but really those are just like the biggest ones. You'll hear one of those at least every game. You'll hear one of those every quarter, honestly. Every 5 minutes. Especially holding, you hear that one all the time. But those are the big penalties. I think if you learn those, you'll really understand what's going on better, because it can be really confusing when someone gets called for a penalty and you have no idea what they did. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you on Thursday with the big games for this week. As well, it's going to be Thanksgiving, so there's going to be some great Thanksgiving games to watch. So I will see you guys next time, and thanks for watching.